Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel for HotCars.com, and today we've got what is arguably the largest vehicle we've ever tested with this, the 2021 Ford F-250 Limited. And as you can see, it's a massive diesel truck with an even bigger engine under its hood. But more surprisingly, it's full of tech features and neat little hiding places and little quirks throughout. Now, I'm gonna show you a bunch of those. We're also gonna take it out for a spin and see how it performs in a city environment such as Miami. But before we do any of that, I wanna make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. So let's start with the way the F-250 looks, because over the last week or so, I've discovered that this is one of the most attention-grabbing vehicles I've ever tested in terms of looks and people wanting to know about it. This thing grabs a ton of attention. Now, this particular truck is finished in rapid red, something that I haven't seen most F-250s feature a bright color like this. Most of them are either black, white, or silver, like most cars in general. But I'm really glad to see this one in bright red, which I'm sure only adds to the sort of attention-grabbing nature of this design. Now, in the front, you're gonna notice a massive front grille, which isn't unusual for the F-250, but in this case, it appears bigger than ever before. Now, this being a limited trim, it does get 20-inch wheels and large Michelin tires that other trim levels in its sort of family don't get. They have to deal with smaller wheels, but this being a limited, it gets the bigger tires, which are nice and chromed out, and kind of goes along with the rest of the sort of chrome touches that you get throughout the truck. Now, and speaking of chrome, you are only getting chrome in the sort of front end of the truck. You're going to notice that along the sides, you don't have a ton of chrome throughout, so the truck doesn't stand out by being shiny. It stands out with its design and its presence on the road. Now, looking down the sides of the F-250, you're going to find out that its design is a bit of a double-edged sword. And I mean that because it's fairly simplistic. Looking at the doors all the way back to its bed, it's fairly simple. There's no strong design characteristics going on here. And I would argue that it's a bit tucked in perhaps, because given the size of this truck overall, how wide and how long it is, if you had extra wide bodywork and extra wide wheels and tires fitted to it, you wouldn't be able to fit firstly within the lane, but also when you want to park somewhere, it would be even more of a hassle than it kind of already is given its length. So I really do like the fact that its bodywork is nicely simple, it's very clean, and I like the fact that it's not overcomplicated for the sake of being overcomplicated. Now, this being a crew cab, it just means that you get two full-size doors in the front and in the rear. It's basically almost like a massive SUV if you sort of forget about the bed in the back. But speaking of the bed, you can have two bed configurations. You can have one that's 6 3/4 feet long, which is this one, or an 8-foot bed, which is substantially even longer than this one. But I think this is probably the one you're gonna wanna go for. You're probably not gonna wanna go any bigger than this if you live in a city environment like this. Obviously, if you have more space, go ahead and go for the big one if you need it. Now, naturally, with a truck that is as tall as this and a bed that is subsequently tall as well, you're gonna want easy access. Now, I'm gonna show you how you do that. Now, you press a button and the tailgate automatically opens, because of course, when you're paying this much for a truck, who wants to open it themselves? But there's a button in here, you can press it and it's gonna release the step that's hiding in here, right? Now, that already is very clever, and that would be enough for most people. But in order so you don't lose your balance, you can pull this out right here, and then it's easy to step up and down. Now, the added benefit of this system is the fact that it can hold up to 350 pounds. So even if you are on the larger side, you don't have to worry, because the truck will be able to hold you. Now, if you look at this truck's back window, you're gonna notice a little sticker that says Tough Bed on it. And that's because this truck has a spray-in bed liner already from factory. Now, previously you had to go to an aftermarket company to get something like this done, but now you can get it straight from the factory, and you can tell by that little sticker, it has that sort of seal that it did exactly come from Ford. Now, I want to take some time to talk about a really interesting interior feature, which I think is not only unique, but very useful for the F-250. Now, in terms of the rear end, we do have little USB ports and such. Back here, you have USB-C and the regular USB ports. Now, the seats in the back are heated, which is, again, a very sort of luxury-oriented extra. But enough about that. I want to talk about two main things having to do with these seats. Now, the first thing, there's a little latch on the side. You can pull it, and the seats move up like that, and they reveal this panel down here. Now, what this panel does, there's a little latch here. If I unlock it, I can lift this panel up like so, and now I have extra storage options if I want to put more things back here. Now there's little dividers so things don't move about, which is really nice, and when you put the seats back down, it's nicely and flush. Now the downside is you can't put something under the seat anymore, but the upside is that you have this nice storage that's kind of like hidden in plain sight. Now to put it back down, you basically push it and it locks back into place. The added benefit of that is that while you're moving around and the truck is sort of going, you don't have this little thing flapping up and down causing extra noise. Last thing I want to mention, there's a power inverter on that corner over there, so you can power tools and such. If you want to use this as a work truck, you can definitely do that. But also, let's mention how much legroom there is in here, given that this is a truck. If I didn't know there was a bed in the back, this looks almost like a full-size, like luxury SUV in terms of space. But again, very clever and very cool. So let's talk about this truck's interior, because as this truck sits, this is a limited model. This is what you would call a luxury-oriented full-size pickup truck, and there's a lot going on here. Now, in the regular F-150, you can get up to a 12-inch infotainment screen, but the F-250 doesn't get that just yet. You have to make do with the smaller screen, although you still get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, the things you would expect. There's a nice little row of buttons here, which you have your traction control, your hazard, your lane keep assist, and also you have this camera, which I think is extremely clever because given the size of this truck, when you're maneuvering and parking in tight spaces, you can press the camera button and it shows you directly what's in front of the truck, so you can park it nice and easily. Now, in terms of leathers, we have these two-tone seats. They're cream and black. They are cooled and heated, but most importantly, they do offer massage. Like, what other vehicle can you get in that tows 20,000 pounds, has 1,000 pounds-feet of torque, but can also massage you and have cooled seats straight from factory and with a warranty? Now, in terms of the overall layout, it's very similar to what we get in the exterior. So it's almost like a nice cohesive transition from the exterior into the interior, because everything here remains big and chunky. You have big chunky dials. All the buttons are nice and big. They're very easy to use. They're very clearly laid out. But look at these air vents. They're enormous. You have Super Duty on the dash. You have a little hidden compartment there. But overall, everything is kind of like that big and chunky approach. Now you do have your 110 volt and your 12 volt right there. In terms of interior materials, everything in here feels very, very high quality. You have leather on the dash, you have leather in the center console, leather on the doors, there's little wood trim throughout. But again, everything in here feels incredibly high quality, especially obviously given the price you're paying. In front of the dash, you have obviously leather wrapped steering wheel with big chunky controls. This is very similar to what you'd find in an F-150, but again, not too mad at it. It's a very sizable wheel, and there's a digital instrument cluster in the center flanked by 2 analog gauges. They read information very clearly, and what I like is that they're very, very adjustable depending on what kind of information you want to see about your truck, whether it's your speed, your fuel, the trailer. And one thing that this truck has is your trailer backup assist, which again, if you are towing something, it's very easy to maneuver that with these added little features. And also you have your radar guided cruise control, you have your lane keep assist. This truck has a ton of really useful tech, not only in the luxury side, but also in the maneuverability side. Now, before we get on the road, let's talk about what is perhaps this truck's most important feature with its engine. Now, under the hood, we have a 6.7 liter turbocharged V8 diesel engine. Now, total power output, we're looking at 475 horsepower and 1,050 pounds-feet of torque. Now, this being a 2021 model, that's up slightly from previous generations that came in just under 1,000 pounds-feet of torque. But if you know anything about Ford trucks, you know that this 6.7 liter engine has been in production for quite some time, and this right here is the sort of latest and greatest version of them all. Now, one thing you're gonna notice is that it's very, very packed in here, and it's very tall. Now, I have my tripod and my camera extended as high as it goes, because there's not a lot of room in here to work. Everything here is very neatly and tightly packed. But the added benefit of that engine is that you have that massive amount of torque coming low in the rev range, so when you do get going, you have power available basically instantly and whenever you want it. Now, all of that power goes to either all 4 or the rear wheels via a 10-speed automatic transmission. Now, previous years of this exact same generation F-250 had a 6-speed automatic transmission. This one does have the intent of giving you greater fuel economy. Now, during my time with this truck, I've averaged about 14 miles to the gallon, but the gallon is very, very sizable. So you can really go a long time without having to refuel because the capacity of the tank is enormous, which makes it really ideal if you're trying to use it as a work truck or for long road trips. Now, in terms of towing capacity, I touched on that earlier. We're looking at a 20,000 max with the towing package. One thing I like is that not a lot of vibrations or noise come in through the cabin when you are in traffic. Remember, this is still kind of a luxury-oriented truck, and I like that about this. Now, I want to start the driving portion off with a bit of honesty, because to be completely frank, I had never driven a big diesel truck like this before. Now, I'm very, very fortunate that I get to drive brand new cars all the time as my job, but I just had never, for some reason or another, gotten to drive a massive diesel truck before. And I'm not just referring to the Ford F-250, I'm also talking about the Ram and the Chevy as well. As a result of that, I really, truly had no idea what to expect when this thing showed up at my doorstep about a week ago. But after spending a ton of time with it and driving a lot of miles in it, I've gotten very, very used to it, and I have a lot of thoughts that have evolved from when it first arrived to right now. Now, when this thing arrived a week ago, the first thing that struck me the most while getting behind the wheel is how tall you are. I had never seen the roofs of so many cars as I have over the last week or so. And aside from having that height, the overall width of this truck means you have an incredible road presence. And it's something that other drivers on the road quickly notice as well, because I've never had a situation where I'm driving and so many people want to jump out of my way, even if I'm not driving even remotely aggressively. Even if you're just calm, people seem to kind of jump out of the way of this F-250, probably because it is freaking massive. Now, after a week of driving this thing every single day, I've become incredibly used to the driving position. I'm incredibly used to being this tall. Now, living in a city like Miami, especially like in the apartment building where I live, this thing almost didn't fit. The height requirement of most apartment like parking garages, this thing will not fit. So if you are living in an apartment building like I do, that's definitely something to consider. However, in most driving scenarios on a day-to-day basis, I didn't notice or feel like I couldn't get into anywhere that I wanted to go. It's not like it's unreasonably tall, but you'll definitely want to keep an eye out for any and all height warnings you'll encounter while out on the road. Now, as a quick reminder, I want to talk about the engine that we have up front, because as mentioned earlier, it is a 6.7 liter turbocharged diesel V8. Now, in terms of power, we're looking at 475 horsepower and 1,050 pounds-feet of torque. Now, those numbers sound massive, and if you're like me and you hadn't really had any true experiences with diesel engines, you might think this thing is incredibly, blazingly fast, and it sort of is. The key thing to remember about those torque figures is that you're starting very, very low in the rev range. I think the torque figure comes in at around 1,600 RPM. So when you put your foot down, it's not that like you go into hyperspace with outright speed. It's more you get this commanding like shove that has, it feels almost like an unstoppable force as it accelerates up to speed. And speaking of power, as that torque figure might suggest, there is no lack of it anywhere in the rev range. Whether you're going really fast, whether you're going at slower speeds, once you put your foot on the gas, it takes off and it goes. Now, I want to preface at this point that because I live in South Florida, I've been mostly driving this in a city environment. And this particular truck being a limited, which is the very sort of luxury-oriented one, chances are you'll also drive it in a very city-oriented environment. Now, I understand this could easily double as a work truck, but when you consider all the expensive materials and just how expensive this truck is, I would wager that it would spend a good chunk of its time just on normal city streets, acting almost as a luxury vehicle. And in that sense, the F-250 Limited is actually quite impressive. Now, in terms of outright materials, I was also very, very surprised. Now, it's not like you're gonna get some crazy designs like something from an all-out luxury car, but everything feels high quality and worth the price. Now, one thing you'll notice is that even though I'm in this high lifted truck on a highway, there isn't a whole lot of wind noise coming in through here. I don't have to exactly yell in order to be heard. I can have conversations very, very easily. And that's something I liked about this truck, because I've driven other vehicles that are very tall and you get a ton of that wind noise coming through. And frankly, it's annoying. But in this case, it's not something I've had to deal with at all, and it's actually something that's very, very welcome. So there we have it, the 2021 Ford F-250 Limited. And in summary, this truck kind of proves you can really have it all if you have enough money to spend. Because for starters, you have a vehicle that is very, very much willing to work, but is also incredibly luxurious. There's few vehicles that can tow 20,000 pounds, but you can also have a massage with cooled seats and a quiet and comfortable cabin, such as this F-250. The best part of the 250 lineup, however, is that if you go into lower trim levels with cheaper prices, you can get a truck that is solely focused on being a work vehicle. However, if you do want those luxury extras, they are on offer here, but they do come at a cost because this truck is certainly not cheap. But given its capabilities, the quality of the materials, and the overall driving experience, I would argue that it's worth it. And with that, I want to thank you guys all so much for watching. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again really soon.